Today, we're exploring a very innovative topic that's transforming the way we interact and manage a wide array of assets. From real estate and gold to intellectual property to commodities, tokenization is unlocking new opportunities and efficiencies. I'm Jaz Takar, VP of Engineering at Xrpl, and it's my privilege to guide our discussion today. Joining me on stage are a few experts who have been shaping the RWA narrative. We have Sanjay Burari, co-founder and chief business officer of Zonix, Michael Cotton, founder at Meld Gold, and John McCoy, founder at Proper Home. With such a panel, I know it's going to be an insightful session, so welcome to you all. Let's start with introductions. Sanjeev.
Yeah, thank you, Jess. So my name is Sanjeev. We've been into tokenization space since 2017. So just to give you an introduction, it took me 3.5 years to get my first paid client. So that was something when I started. So we built a tech for an infrastructure which we are easily actually put any asset on chain, get the liquidity and the issuance for the real world assets to convert their ownership into digital tokens. So yeah, we are based out of Menlo Park in California. And yeah, we are here. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you. Michael.
Morning, everyone. Michael Cotton, founder at Meld Gold. At Meld Gold, we focus on merging digital with physical. So that includes streamlining the entire supply chain and allowing the industry to come on chain through the infrastructure we build. Starting with gold and silver, which if anyone saw the announcement recently, we'll launch gold and silver on the Xrpl Q3.
Great. Take it away, John.
Morning, everyone. My name is John, CEO and founder of Proper Home. We've taken a very different approach to the real-world asset space. Essentially, we have created a reputational platform that rewards real estate professionals for verifiable data and professional engagement.
Great. All right. Let's start with the basics. So real-world tokenization really means the creation of a digital representation of a real-world asset on a blockchain. This is a way of representing ownership of an asset through a token. The assets involved can be stocks, bonds, gold, commodities, real estate, and intellectual property. This is more than just a technology trend. It's a revolutionary step towards the future where access to assets is democratized and where traditionally illiquid assets can become liquid. So to kick it off, Michael, in what ways does tokenization enable innovative use cases in commodities and particularly in gold?
Yeah, thanks, Jaz. So, there's two components with how we see innovation in RWAs, and in particular the RWAs we focus on, which is physical. Once you digitize an asset and you actually bring it on chain, it really unlocks a whole range of utility, which is one of the core value propositions we heard it talked about in several of the talks today. So once we actually get it on chain, we simplify the process of identifying who owns it, we simplify the process of authenticating the product, and that really opens up a huge amount of functions. So in reality, the key value proposition is how can we use gold in place of things like fiat, how we would traditionally have used it in Web 2. So that is really the key value proposition. How can we use gold to borrow? How can we use gold to take positions in options protocols? How do we use gold to generate yield? With the idea that gold then becomes a really interesting alternative to sitting in things like US dollars. Then on the other side of once we actually do digitize, and this is where Meld Gold does so much of its work, is how do we minimize the trust required to connect that digital twin to the physical product. And this is really something that hasn't seen innovation for 20, 30, 40 years. So a lot of the work we do is how do we make it so you're not just owning a digital twin of something in the real world, but we're minimizing the trust required in taking up that digital ownership. And that's really where we sort of see scaling things like digital ownership of RWAs being global, because the key issue currently is there's still so much trust required for the off-chain component to the on-chain. So that's where a lot of our work takes place.
Great. John, real estate, a traditional business with lots of legacy processes, lots of different parties involved. How is tokenization benefiting your space?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a real hot topic in the last 12 months, RWAs in particular in real estate. Real estate's a funny one. It's super legacy, as you mentioned, and jurisdictionally, it's very, very different, right? We have different regulation in different zones, in different micro markets within those zones. If you look at Spain, for instance, it's very fragmented. So regionally, it's not comparable, even never mind on a national level. So it's quite difficult to do end-to-end transactions today in a traditional sense. However, there's still a lot of inadequacies in how the assets are managed today that we feel tokenization can revolutionize. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Sanjeev, Zonix is asset agnostic, I believe.
Yeah.
The platform can tokenize just about anything. So what type of trends are you seeing in the market?
So we would probably be seeing more from the tech infrastructure capabilities and the readiness in terms of making it happen. So what we built is our own standard, which could probably solve the major problems today, is the compliance, user experience, liquidity. And to make it happen, once you issue the tokens, you need to have the buy side ready. So it means that you need to create the liquidity pool providers to actually make those tokens purchased by these token holders. So I think that's the key from Zonix perspective, and that's one of the reasons that we've been building this whole infrastructure since over these 6 years, and now have multiple use cases in different sectors, like from carbon credits to commercial real estate assets to an NBA team's minority shares on chain. So it's something more creative, but yeah, we are asset agnostic at the end, so we could do any asset to be tokenized, provided they have the regulations, inbuilt regulations on our chain, which actually supports, the infrastructure.
Great. Okay. Now that we have a better understanding of tokenization and the use cases and its benefits, let's dive into adoption. Michael, traditional players in commodities, again, very legacy organizations. There's the supply chain. There's now with the emergence of tokenization of gold, what does this really mean for businesses?
At its core, it is a disruptive technology. So, in finding efficiency through the use of blockchain technology, it does mean that parts of the supply chain do vanish. So, there are elements that obviously won't be thrilled with the idea of coming on chain and with the efficiencies they bring, and seeing some of these legacy businesses have to change. But on the other side, we have core pieces of infrastructure and some of the most important pieces within the industry that find incredible value through on-chain activity and through bringing these assets on-chain. So thankfully, I think the most important parts, the most efficient parts, the parts that are key to creating a world where these kind of assets can be used the way they should, they really value what's to come and they can really see the value in it. At the same time, to your point, Jazz, it is a really old industry, a lot of companies, 100-year plus, which does mean they're not as nimble. So a lot of work we also do is hand-holding through this process. And that's really just helping them take those first steps. So it might be taking a very small step into the space and doing their first small amount of activity that's very low risk in their eyes on chain, and just starting to make them realize that, hey, this is actually no different to anything else they would have used traditionally, just happens to be new technology. And as they wrap their heads around that, I think we will see that adoption flow in a far more meaningful way. So disruption won't be good for everyone, but overall it's going to be a great result for the industry and for users.
Great. John, lots of people involved in the industry of real estate. There's brokers, lenders, borrowers, and of course the buyers. So how much of a barrier is understanding the Web3 concepts to entry?
Really good question. I think this is something we spent a lot of energy and time on in the beginning, focusing on a consumer-focused product or consumer-facing product. We needed to cut through the tech, stop talking about the power of the tech as much as we all like to talk about it. It was about real output, right? How is this going to change lives? So on the consumer side, it's all about trust. We're a Trustpilot-like real estate marketplace. We enable transactions, relationships, engagements to happen easier. And on the sell side, real estate agents, I don't know how many times I've delivered the air mile conversation when we talk about rewards, right? We compare our rewards to air miles all the time, and agents get it. So the key is keeping it under the hood and talking about impact.
Great, thank you for that. Sanjeev, you're a platform. Take us through some of the key functions and features that a platform needs to have to be successful in this space.
Sure. So the space we are in, it's actually it is a global compliant regulatory compliance space. So we inbuilt the compliance based on the jurisdiction of an asset class. It actually applies the regulations in that particular region. So what does that mean is because these are securities, it changes the regulations based on the where the asset is actually issued, the securities are. So we have an inbuilt global compliance. That's one of the standard which you use to actually tokenize real-world assets. And this is very specific to RWA. For ERC compatibility is ERC 7518, and for non-ERC is basically DICE standard, which we have. So it's an interoperably a compliant global oracle, which has already been inbuilt in our standard.
Okay, great. All right, let's move on to some of the unknowns now. RWA faces a number of regulatory challenges, including jurisdictional variances, KYC, AML, and also asset classification. How do you ensure compliance with all of these different regulatory requirements across the globe? Michael, we'll start with you.
Yeah, thanks, Jazz. Gold has quite a unique position. It's a well-understood asset. It's probably one of the only assets in the world that generally it's considered the global population appreciate what it is, understand what it is, and accept it for its value. So it has a slightly more unique position than several other assets, which is a real benefit for projects like ourselves. I think where the challenges will really arise for things like gold on-chain is once we start seeing those assets utilised in more exotic, for lack of a better word, ways. So as you start trying to generate yield with gold, as you start using it as an alternative to fiat in all kinds of financial transactions, I think that's where the regulatory challenges will come. So those projects that are really providing utility for these assets, I think we will see some interesting challenges about how they navigate that, especially to the point on a global scale. Once you're trying to manage that across a global audience, with KYC and all the other elements that are comprised, it is more difficult. For us, we do see other assets coming on chain. A lot of the technology we're building about connecting that physical with the digital encompasses other assets such as diamonds and other areas as well. So they're another question as well as what happens when those assets go from being something that wasn't really considered to be used in any sort of financial way. What happens when those assets change and start to be able to do things they couldn't do before? So yeah, we really see the challenges coming from the utility that will come with these assets now that they're reaching velocity on chain.
Great. Sanjeev, how does Zonix address this challenge?
So we see this as two ends. One is from the issuer's end, who actually is issuing the assets on chain, and the investors who are actually buying those assets as tokens. So I think if you think about the issuer's end, issuers would like to have a global Oracle compliance inbuilt by using our standard. So actually they are okay to have the compliance clear because it's a global regulated compliant platform. And at the investor's end is more from the perspective of which regions and which exemptions they follow from the regulations so that they can buy those tokens, whether those are overseas tokens or the local tokens which are issued in that particular jurisdiction. So this is how we actually see the challenges to overcome by Zonix platform.
Great. All right. So for our audience, our developers and our futurists and our builders here who are looking to pioneer this space, what should they anticipate when constructing RWA products? And anything specific to the XRP Ledger you want to reference?
Yeah, I mean, I'll probably start with. So, yeah, I mean, if you see the numbers, it's almost around, it's 10% of GDP by 2030 is going to be on chain, which is $16.1 trillion. Besides this, it's almost 6 billion, over 6 billion is tokenized, RWA tokenized value has been locked. And, from 2021, it's $91 million of RWAs has been actually issued in terms of the lending is concerned. But now it's over $10.2 billion. So it's growing pretty fast in terms of the adoption is concerned. We see a very huge role of XRP because, of course, it's cheap and it's fast, it's secured. And at the same time, XRP has built the whole ecosystem in place in terms of RWA. Zonix is putting the RWA. You have a custodian as well, and now you're launching stablecoins. So I think it gives the whole 9 yards in terms of giving whole solution for RWA tokenization as one partner with XRP Ledger.
That's great. Thank you. All right. Final question to you all. It's the one-sentence question. How would you summarize the potential impact of tokenization?
I hope we're going to look back on this time as a very special early stage entry into a new world. Bringing RWAs on chain makes complete sense. It opens so much liquidity, and we can do so much more with the assets. So for me, I think the big thing is regulation, sensible regulation, fast, so we can all get on with building. So yeah, that's
Great.
Jazz, can I go back to your last question very quickly, if that's okay?
Please do.
So I think, from my point of view, there's two key areas that we still need to see more innovation, which is access and utility, which I know I feel like I maybe harped on about that. Anyone who listens to me hears me talk about this all the time. But in reality, we need more products to be building use cases for once these assets come on chain. Once they come on chain, what happens with them, the real value people will find, and the reason they will come on chain and want to own these assets on chain is because they can find more value than they could have in the traditional space. So I think there's a huge opportunity for those that are wanting to build utility around these assets and how you can actually put these assets to work and do things that are more interesting than you can do now. And then secondly, access. So one of the incredible things about coming on chain and about coming onto things like Xrpl is it instantly becomes global. So you can take these assets anywhere in the world and use them anywhere in the world. But you need the rails for those anywhere in the world to actually access these assets. So the ability to buy $1's worth of gold because you now want to save in gold versus save in dollars, these kind of access points that are going to be fairly geographically niche, these are the kind of opportunities that will be around all kinds of RWA assets. I think then if I answer your second question, inevitably, this is going to be a revolution that will change the RWA space in many ways. But I think most of us agree, and everyone who's here in the audience in particular will agree that it's unstoppable now.
Great.
Yeah. I see, there's a huge adoption happened since 2017. It's actually now we are solving the problem of issuing the tokens, converting them from a physical, interest to a digital interest. But then there is somebody who needs to buy those tokens. So now we are creating those global liquidity distribution rails would actually have a creation of liquidity. So that's something which is extremely important. And that's one of the reasons that more asset owners and institutions would actually adopt this and then put these assets on chains because they have a buy side. And the buy side would consist of different entities, so not only ATS or decentralized exchanges, but there are family offices, sovereign funds, financial institutions, broker-dealer networks. All of these entities would like to invest in digital assets. And those global liquidity distribution rails, which connects the sell side and the buy side, those are extremely effective, which is actually we've launched just recently, would actually enable more institutions and asset owners to adopt this. That's what I see is happening right now in this space.
Great. Okay. That's all we have for today. Thank you for your insights. It's obvious that RWA tokenization will play a very important role in your industries in the future. Thank you for your participation. Thank you to the audience for your participation. Until next time.